Troy, it's Chris at Fox 5. Can you hear me?
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good. All right. We're about 6 minutes from the top of the show. We're going to talk a little weather first, then we'll get into some of the issues out there when it comes to spring break travel, and we'll bring you into the conversation. Tony P will be joining us as well. He's down in Florida currently, so he kind of just went through this and is bracing to do it again. He'll be in Zoom as well.
Sounds good. I actually leave for Palm Springs tomorrow morning. I'm planning to get there 3 hours early.
All right. Perfect. All right. I'll check in with you in just a bit.
Sounds good.
Tony, it's Chris. Can you hear me?
Yep. Right here.
All right, great. We're a minute away.
Sounds good.
Tony, that's Troy in the Zoom room with you. He's going to talk to us all about spring break travel.
All right. I'm going to need some advice. I'm here in Florida. I'm leaving Friday night. So I'm going to. Oh, God bless you. Nice. Fort Lauderdale Friday night.
All right, it's 9 o'clock on this Wednesday night. This is the Fox. This is the Live Zone Primetime. I almost forgot the name of the show. We're off to a hot start. It's 9 o'clock on this Thursday night. I'm producer Chris. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching on Fox 5 DC's YouTube page or if you're watching on Fox Local, on what has been a very active evening weather-wise. We'll get into all of that in just a second. First, though, we have to say hello to our co-host, the one and only Tony P, coming to us live from down in sunny Florida, I assume, because Tony P is showing that color on his cheeks.
Yes, it's a little red, but it's, it kind of matures. It marinates after a couple of days, and then it will set in nice. I played a little golf again today. I have to tell you, my friends, I went from an F- the other day to, I would say, a C-. So we're getting there because I couldn't go any lower. So any improvement would have been just a victory. And today there was some improvement. I won a little bit of money too. So
okay. Well, that makes everything better, if I'm being honest with you.
How you doing, my friend? What's it like back home? How are things going today? What's the vibe? Like, I kind of feel like I have FOMO.
This was the vibe, Tony P. I'm going to take you right to our radar loop, okay? This is what things looked like over the course of the last 3 hours or so. You see that line of green, yellow, and red pushing through upper Montgomery County, Frederick County, also parts of Howard County, right through Baltimore, north of the Beltway for the most part. But we saw some active scenes. We had tornado watches. We had tornado warnings popping up across the DMV earlier this evening. Also some severe thunderstorm watches and warnings. But Tony P, get that. This is just the beginning, because that cold front responsible for those storms could also mean the DMV could go from 80 plus degrees today to a chance for snow in less than 24 hours. We are talking about late tomorrow morning. That cold air mass will drop surface temperatures about 40 degrees overnight, but the atmosphere itself could be cold enough to turn some raindrops into snowflakes. Time frame late tomorrow morning or in the early afternoon. Of course, meteorologist Mike Thomas is going to keep an eye on everything. Everything you need to know coming up on Fox 5 News at 10 and 11 tonight. And of course, the one and only Tick Tock Tuck will have complete coverage in the morning if we see any snowflakes. But Tony P, we had to cut in the programming at both the late 6:30 half hour through part of Like It or Not at 7 o'clock because of those tornado warnings across the DMV.
It's right. I mean, I'd say this is kind of this time of year, and what I want to know definitely from Mike at some point is this all normal? Is it just because
it's very early? It's obviously very early. Yeah. You know, I went back to check in with the team a little earlier for them to put up that looping radar for me, and they basically said it's good practice for what we can expect to see through the spring and summer. You know, not necessarily, but we have seen more instances of severe weather. And obviously yesterday, Mike talked about this possibility because we were keeping an eye on some of those major storms that were already popping up across the Midwest, Chicago, Indiana, Oklahoma, et cetera.
Well, part of me really thinks, Chris, is this a precursor to an early hurricane season? Will that start maybe in July and August or even earlier than that? When usually we see Florida across the East Coast, there's a lot of hurricane activity around August, September when kids go back to school. Is that going to shift now? And will that range of where the hurricanes start Will it be closer to the mainland? Will it be closer to Florida? Will it maybe go into more North Carolina and Louisiana, the Gulf Coast? Who knows? So I think this is going to be interesting to follow throughout the summer. If this is the beginning of something, and is this something to do with the climate shift? I mean, are we starting to see it, I think, more prevalent than we have in the past? Before it was a lot more subtle. You'd have a couple years with really high temperatures of heat, but you didn't see a lot of this type of weather activity. Now it's happening in many different parts of the country.
Yeah, no question about it. The Fox 5 weather team will keep you up to date on all of the changes. And of course, you can stay up to date on all the changes. Even, Tony P, there aren't many hours that we aren't on air, whether it's streaming, whether it's linear, but you can stay up to date with the forecast anytime with the Fox Local app on your phone. The Fox Weather on the Go is available on that Fox Local Weather app as well. Fox Local app, weather available on it. Exactly. You can get the forecast for everywhere you are on that Fox Local app as well. Tony P, really what was crazy though? What was crazy? The same time that we are talking about 80-degree temperatures and snow, we also have to talk about the cherry blossoms, because that dramatic temperature shift that we could see could cause some major confusion for DC's iconic cherry blossoms, because after a couple days of those spring-like temperatures, Tony P, the blossoms officially reached stage 1. Peak bloom still predicted for March 28th to April 1st. Earlier today, Fox 5 caught up with National Park Service spokesman Mike Ledurst to find out if this is earlier than expected. Take a listen.
Mild winter last year, we hit stage 1 on March 11th, which is today. So we're, at least compared to last year, we're right on schedule where we were. These couple of days in a row of temperatures in the mid-80s, that has really accelerated this.
So that dramatic temperature drop, like I said, could mess with things a little bit. Maybe back in 2008, the blossoms actually hit the green bud stage on February 19th, but didn't hit the second stage for nearly a month. Last year, like you heard Mike say, we hit the green bud stage on the exact same day as this year. We hit stage 2 5 days later. There are 6 total stages, Tony P, so we still have some time until peak bloom, but we'll have to see if those huge temperature swings have any impact on those little tiny buds that draw so many people to the DMV.
That is really quick. I mean, I always think of flowers taking a long time. They're very deliberate. I mean, they don't, again, it's hard to watch it throughout an entire day. But, I mean, these things pop up quickly. Again, I've been here for 3.5 years, and I know they're a major part. And I've been to, of course, the showings of the flowers, but have never actually understood how quick they rise. So really interesting stuff there.
Tony P, you are going to be in charge. So my favorite, everyone here at Fox 5, of the stages, the peduncle elongation is obviously everyone's favorite because it's our favorite to say. So you will officially be in charge when we hit peduncle elongation. Tony P, the P stands for peduncle elongation, as everyone out there knows. So you will be.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, you will be in charge of covering that for us. Speaking of spring, though, Tony P, speaking of spring, we also have to talk about spring break because it's right around the corner. And if you have travel plans, things could get tricky, and they could get tricky because of what you are seeing on your screen right now, those long-ass lines. That's because the Department of Homeland Security still shut down, and more TSA staffers are calling out now. That has led to some long lines at airports, and there could even be fewer screeners in the future and more passengers in the days and weeks ahead. Call-out rates climbed into double digits this week at some airports after employees missed their second paycheck in a row. Even worse, TSA agents are now quitting in big numbers as well. More than 300 have left the agency in the last month, and that trend is likely to accelerate with lawmakers on Capitol Hill deadlocked on a funding deal. Now, Democrats have introduced legislation to fund the entire department except ICE and CPB, which they say are in need of major reforms. But Majority Leader John Thune says that's a non-starter, meaning these travel troubles are likely to continue for the near future. Now, at the exact same time, Tony P, if you're driving somewhere instead, you may not be immune to issues. Because since the war on Iran began, oil prices have increased 20%, while gas prices have climbed more than 50 cents. So, to address the supply disruptions, the International Energy Agency says its member countries will release 400 million barrels of oil President Donald Trump said today his administration will tap the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve to try and prevent any more pain at the pump. And Tony P., I know because you are currently down in Florida, this is something you have obviously been keeping your eye on because you are going to be traveling before you know it.
Oh, yes. So now when I first came down to Florida, I flew out at 10:39 on last Saturday, and it was a breeze. I walked through. I mean, I have Clear, just full disclosure. I have one of those services that allows me to go through a little bit quicker. And there wasn't a ton of traffic. It was very easy getting in, took an Uber in, then took the flight out. But Friday. Friday, I have a flight at 8:33 or something like that, Florida time. So I'm debating, and I have lunch with a friend of mine in Fort Lauderdale where I'm flying out of. I'm debating, moving that lunch up to like probably 1 o'clock so that I can get into the airport by 4, just so I can avoid any type of friction. Even if Clear has a 2+ hour wait, and again, I'm not sure, but I'm definitely trying to figure out what my plans are going to be, because usually I get there a couple hours early, an hour and a half before we board. But who knows? Will the processing for the bags be different? Will that impact the security lane?
Tony P., you know who knows? Travel expert Troy Petenbrink. And that hour and a half may not be enough. Look, he's going to join us. He joins us now live to talk more about these travel issues, what to expect, and what you could possibly do to kind of mitigate some of them. Troy, thanks so much for joining us here tonight.
Because right now we have a perfect storm when it comes to travel. No pun intended there, but I mean, we are going into some bad times here. You're absolutely right about the TSA delays. I mean, we are looking at 3.5 to 4 hour delays at certain airports, places like Houston, Atlanta, and sorry, Tony P., even down to some of the Florida airports too. So, I think the best advice I can give folks is make sure you're checking in. The TSA website actually has wait times, so you can kind of see what the wait times are at your airport. So you want to check that out. But I would plan in most cases 3 hours minimum.
Wow.
3 hours minimum.
Interesting. And when looking at, so with this app, for example, they're able to, so just a quick question, you're able to see each airport and like the timing for all of that?
Correct. And they use crowdsourcing information. So it's kind of almost real-time updating for that sort of thing. So I would check it, look at it like the day before your flight, just kind of get a sense of what's going on. We do know that traditionally the mornings are a little lighter than the evenings because that's when the backups start. The other thing I think folks need to keep in mind too, if you hear that all of a sudden this funding is approved and those sort of things, do not expect these delays to go away quickly. As Chris mentioned, a number of folks have quit. So there's going to be staff shortages. And at the same time, we're going to see this big increase in the folks traveling. I mean, we're seeing numbers now almost equal to what we saw during the holiday season. So a lot of people want to get away this spring, and that's going to be a problem.
But Troy, it's not just the long lines. You say that airfares could also be going up. And I know you have some recommendations for kind of how to handle that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all linked together. So jet fuel prices are actually going up. The executives have said they've been trying to hold back on fare increases and to be as helpful as possible there, but they can't do that forever. My best advice there is if you've seen an airfare that you've been thinking about locking in, I would go ahead and do it now, but pick a fare where you can actually get a credit back if the price were to drop. That still exists. It's a holdover from the pandemic, so the airlines are still having that available for certain types of tickets. What you do is buy your ticket now, set a price alert. If it drops, just call the airline and say, hey, give me the difference back, either a credit or a refund, depending on the type of ticket you bought. So that's a way you can save some money there. But I would definitely say if you've been teetering, now's probably the time to go ahead and book that ticket.
Now, for people that might have, for example, TSA PreCheck or Clear, for example, that expedited service that allows you to get to security a little bit quicker, will these wait times help inform what those wait times of the expedited process may be, or should you still kind of treat them both equally in terms of potential delays?
Now, across the board, we're hearing that the TSA and PreCheck and the Clear are running a little bit faster. However, I have to say, you just never know what airport might be hit with these, what they're calling these sick outs, these unexpected leaves, those sort of things. So I think, we got to be a little careful here. We're in kind of uncharted territories with this situation right now. Don't take it for granted. I mean, seriously, if you're trying to get somewhere, better to be at the airport, go hang out at the lounge, that sort of thing. But I'd rather be there early than to miss my flight.
So Troy, we're talking about security lines, but you also recommend kind of taking some stock of your own personal security, especially with everything that's going on internationally. Travelers need to be extra cautious right now.
Yeah, they definitely do. The State Department still has a actually a worldwide precaution alert. And I don't know if you've seen the news recently, but there was actually reports of potential drone attacks in the LA area. That's all going to potentially affect flights and have disruption. So a couple things there I recommend for folks. Obviously, as you're traveling anywhere, internationally, domestically, don't get vacation brain, don't get travel brain. Be aware of what your surroundings are going on. If you see something, say something. I know that's, kind of cliche, but at these times, don't take that for granted either. But in terms of preparing, definitely sign up for your carrier's alerts if you have a travel book so they can get in touch with you and let you know if there's delays or issues. If you're traveling internationally, sign up for the STEP program. I know we heard a lot of problems with that, but folks did get out, and those folks who got out early were the ones that were signed up for STEP. So that's the Safe Traveler Enrollment Program through the State Department. It's a free service. You just put in there where you are, where you're going to be, that sort of thing, how they can get in touch with you. So if there are problems, you're getting notified. So definitely keep that in mind. But don't take it for granted, too, that, I'm not flying through the Middle East or I'm not going to those sort of places. The EU has sent out alerts for a lot of their countries. We're looking at Germany, UK, Spain, Switzerland, Italy. They're all on high alert. And then obviously, it wasn't that long ago we had some issues down in Mexico. So again, I don't want to say don't travel. I think people should travel, but I also think that people just need to be smart when they're traveling.
Are there ways that passengers right now, when they're in the security line, can expedite the process for everybody involved if they don't have, for example, those services like Clear or PreCheck? And are there ways they can be a little helpful to the TSA agents that are understaffed right now so they can focus more on priority screenings?
Yeah, well, a couple things to keep in mind here. There are a lot of people who still do not have real IDs. You're going to run into a problem there. If you have a passport, bring that. Don't go through the real ID processing. That's going to cost you money. That's going to cause additional delays. And you almost certainly will miss your flight because they're saying it can take up to a half hour to process if you do not have a real ID. And that was before there was issues with the TSA.
Wow.
So don't take that. You got definitely take that into consideration as well. But just pack your patience. Follow the rules. We all know what to do. Get your belt off. Get your shoes off. Get through the process there. Don't wait till the last minute. It's always amazing how I look at people. I'm like, "Are this your first time flying?"
Right. And shoes you get them on now.
These rules have been around. Yeah, in some cases, yes.
Now, quick follow-up. So I know there's also some people get confused when traveling when it comes to the computers. Take them in, take them out. There's different machines across different airports.
Yes.
Is that more just kind of be on the more cautious side, or are there ways to look that up as well?
No, that's actually airport by airport, so it's actually very specific. But again, in most cases, there are very clear signs all the way through the line that will tell you things like take your laptop out or those sort of things. They're there for a reason. Pay attention. Again, the person last minute who's suddenly pulling everything out of their pocket as they trying to go through the screen. Those are the folks who are slowing things down. That's where you need a cattle prod.
Yeah, for sure. Troy, for anyone who thinks they're going to get away with something by not flying and maybe driving, obviously gas prices going up, president taking steps to try to mitigate that, trying to bring them back down, whether it's tapping the strategic oil, the national reserves, but you've got some tips for drivers as well when it comes to possibly saving some money.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris and Tony, we've all been around long enough to know that prices go up pretty fast, but they go down very slow.
Yes.
So
Yes,
a couple things to keep in mind. Gas Buddy is fantastic. If you're road tripping and you want to find the cheap Gas Buddy is wonderful. There's also an app out there called Upside that can give you some money back if you register. It's a free service. The other thing is, follow those AAA rules that we hear all the time. Go the speed limit. Make sure your car's well maintained. Those are all going to save you some money. Believe it or not, AAA actually says that having your tires properly inflated can save you up to 30% on your gas mileage.
Wow. Now, in terms of traveling, whether it be by land, by air, or by sea, basically, right? With all the turmoil right now and volatility, are there certain planning situations you might advise in terms of when to travel, maybe hold off on a certain travel to a certain time of year potentially, or there's certain areas that may be the best to go to right now for staycations or vacations? What would be your strategy if a family is looking to get a vacation in the next few months, but wants to mitigate these hurdles as much as they can?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're wanting to get away, if you're really wanting to get away and you're concerned about safety and those sort of things, the State Department does a great job of putting out notices about destinations, and you can go to their website, travel.state.gov, put in the country, the destination you want to go to, and it will give you a pretty in-depth report about the current situation there in terms of crime or safety concerns. And what you want to look for are the things that they call it level one. That means there's no issues, feel free to go. And there are a lot of great places that still have that, a lot of places in the Caribbean, those sort of things. So pay attention to those. That's what I would recommend. Now, if you're certainly just overly concerned, the other thing is too, you probably want to avoid the more popular destinations. Those are the ones that, the FBI and the State Department always call soft targets. That's where you have the lone wolf situations. So I would definitely think about those sort of things. There's some great information out there. If you're going to crowded events, those sort of things, be aware of where the exits are, security, those sort of things. But again, I don't want to scare people away from traveling. There's a lot of great information out there that tells you where to go and not go, or where you might want to be cautious about going. Just follow that advice right now. And unfortunately, I don't know if there's going to be a good time here anytime soon. A lot of these things could well go into the summer or beyond. So, but if you want to get away, get away. There's plenty of safe places to get out there. But, again, be cautious.
Troy, what are some of the most popular spring break getaways this year?
Well, we've already heard some of the things. I mean, Florida, Tony is down there at Spring Break Central. Florida still ranks as one of the top places.
Yeah.
Tony P, and the P stands for party animal.
I'm doing the exact opposite. Okay, I am definitely in the Del Boca Vista territory here in Florida. Definitely more of the laid back kind of 4 o'clock in the afternoon dinner.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I will say too is one of the things we know right now, because of what happened in Mexico, they actually have upped their security quite a bit at all the beach destinations. So if you were hesitant about going to places like Cancun or Puerto Vallarta or Cabo or those sort of things, probably now you'll probably see more police presence there than you normally would. It's probably one of the safer areas to go.
Do you think with some of the disruptions with the price of oil for gas as well as jet fuel, do you think that taking the train could be an interesting idea for vacation spots, or is that kind of more obstacles as well?
I'm actually a big train advocate, and right now Amtrak's having their spring sale. I'll put a plug in for Amtrak right now. They're having up to 25% off right now for you book your spring travel. And it's gotten much better. The train goes all the way down into Richmond and Roanoke and those sort of places now, so you get that way. It's America's 250. Get up to Philly, go have a fun train trip to Philly, or go up to New York, or even Boston. I mean, yeah. I tell people all the time too. I mean, I don't poo-poo the bus even. There's some great bus services around here as well. I mean, alternative transportation certainly is things people should look at, especially for families. Sometimes it can be a lot cheaper.
Troy, if people out there have questions and they want to follow you for more answers, where can they go?
On social media, I am The Gay Traveler across all the social media platforms. Feel free to follow, look me up, send me questions. People do all the time. I feel like I should become a travel agent.
Hey, listen, you can run travel agency and social media. Like, we need that.
Yeah, there you go.
More like a face on camera talking about, hey, here's the thing you need to know about today. The people need that.
Yeah. No, and trust me, and I practice what I preach. I'm heading out to Palm Springs tomorrow morning. My flight's at 9. I plan to be at the airport at 6.
Good for you.
All right. Well, safe travels to you, Troy, and everyone out there hitting the road for spring break. We appreciate you spending some time
Thanks,
with us
Chris.
here tonight.
Good luck for you, Tony.
Thank you, Troy.
All right. We're going to take you live to National Harbor, a live picture of the Capitol wheel, all lit up in America for America's 250th, like Troy just said. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to check what Tony P's been keeping his eye on this Wednesday evening. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime on this Wednesday night. Tony P, I want you to check this out. Earlier today, you saw this? Yeah, this is pretty cool. All right, earlier today, the Washington Commanders released some new renderings for what the new stadium on the RFK site will look like. The future home of the Washington Commanders. We got visuals from the highway, tailgate fields, and an aerial view showing what game day could look like. Demolition of the old stadium got underway last year to make room for Washington's return to the district. It is expected to open in 2030 and seat up to 70,000 people. The multi-billion-dollar sports complex construction expected to include housing, green spaces, and the sports complex, obviously. Fox 5's Shamari Stone has more on these new renderings and reaction from Burgundy and Gold fans coming up at Fox 5 News at 10 and 11. Pretty sharp looking, Tony P.
I mean, it also, that's a great drive-in view. Oh my goodness. It also pays homage to the original RFK Jr. design. It's very similar to some of those columns as you see, very much like some of the columns in, I think it's the Gothic era design that we see in DC, very column driven. We see it at the Lincoln Memorial, as well as many others across the city. And as well as federal buildings are designed with similar those type of columns, but they added a little modern taste to it. I think it is so cool. The little like inverted thing here looks like a V. I think that is such a cool stadium. I am really excited to see this thing start to get built because, I mean, the last couple of years it has been abandoned over there and very much an eyesore in the area. And it just, I remember going to Project Glow last couple of years. It's right in the RFK Jr.
I was literally just going to ask you if, since you've been to DC, if you had been to anything over. Did you ever make it inside RFK itself?
So it's funny. I got invited a couple of years ago when they were doing like a final walkthrough before it was going to be torn down. I wasn't in town at the time, wasn't able to do it. But this is kind of weird about me. I'll admit it. I kind of have this thing where I watch like the YouTube videos of like abandoned stadiums when people go inside the stadiums that are so old, like they're abandoned, or they'll go in the abandoned malls. And I kind of find that stuff a little bit cool. I don't know why. It's just very nostalgic, and it brings back a lot of just, the kind of different eras, right? And I just always found that kind of stuff interesting. I think there's an adjective for people that like that stuff. I can't find it in my head right now, but there are many of us who kind of like those. They have YouTube vlogs, like people go into old stadiums and they'll go take a tour of them, and it's like totally desolate, and it's almost like everything's stuck in a time warp. And from what I remember driving through that stadium, driving past it and being around it at Project Glow in those fairgrounds, it looked like time was standing still, and so that's sort of the interesting part of it, but they're definitely paying homage in a very, very good way to the old RFK Stadium and just the memories that were made in there.
So, I'm from Philadelphia, and back in the day we had Veterans Stadium, and that's where the Phillies and the Eagles played, and also old school Three River Stadium out in Pittsburgh. So RFK, Veterans, and Three River Stadium, they called them the cookie cutter stadiums because they were very, very similar in not only the exterior design, but the interior as well. And RFK had kind of the unique curve to the way the roof line was, as opposed to Veterans Stadium and Three River. But, for me, it was always very nostalgic for that reason. The last thing I think I went and saw there was Dave Grohl did the 20th anniversary Foo Fighters tour on July 4th and had a whole festival there. It had stormed so bad beforehand, Tony P. The whole arena was flooded. Everything was already crappy anyway. I'm pretty sure most of the electronics went down, and people were trying to buy beer, and they were only using cash. I don't remember exactly whether, or maybe it was the cash machines went out and they were only accepting cards. Anyway, total disaster, but so much fun.
That would have been an interesting documentary to put up there, the one night when everything just shut down.
No question. All right. We've reminisced enough about RFK. Let's get to what else you've been keeping an eye on this Wednesday night.
Kind of delaying the inevitable of doing my rundown. Now, this first story is going to be about my golf game today. I shot an 87 today. Okay, sorry. I had to add that one in there. Okay, let's get serious now. So new reporting is suggesting a U.S. strike. I know we talked about yesterday, Chris, about the strike on the Iranian school. That may have been related to outdated intelligence, raising questions about how the operation was authorized originally. Officials reviewing the incident say the strike targeted a site believed to be connected to militant activity, but the intelligence identifying the target may have been months old by the time the operation took place on February 28th. Investigators now believe the location that was struck turned out to be an elementary school building that was recently built in Iran. And U.S. defense officials say they are reviewing the intelligence process and decision chain that led to that strike. So very interesting development tonight in that strike that happened on February 20th at the beginning of the Iran war. The Trump administration is also opening several new trade investigations that could lead to tariffs on foreign imports. Federal agencies are examining whether certain countries are using unfair subsidies or trade practices that harm U.S. industries, particularly in manufacturing and strategic sectors. If investigators determine that the imports threaten domestic production or national security, the administration could move forward with tariffs or other trade restrictions. This is sort of a workaround for the administration to get over on the decision made by the Supreme Court a couple of weeks ago on the domestic tariffs. In domestic policy, the U.S. Department of Agriculture is being sued over a proposal involving the SNAP program. The plan would allow states to ban soda and sugary drinks from being purchased with food stamp benefits. Beverage industry groups argue the government does not have the legal authority to restrict specific products under SNAP, while supporters of the policy say the goal is to reduce diet-related illness and improve nutrition among program participants. In Hawaii, we've been talking about, we saw some of the volcano eruptions the other day. This is going to be talking about some of the weather as well. Meteorologists are warning about a powerful Kona storm system expected to bring heavy rain, flash flooding, and strong winds across multiple islands. Kona storms are formed when winds shift and pull warm moisture-laden air towards the islands from the south. Forecasts say some areas on the islands could see several inches of rain in a short period of time towards the end of this week, increasing the risks of flooding and landslides, especially in the more mountainous regions of Hawaii. So watch out if you're traveling there or you're leaving or have been on vacation in the commission of vacation there. On the economic front, the latest consumer price index reports shows inflation continuing to cool in the United States. The CPI rose 2.4% over the past year, down from 2.7% the previous month, while core inflation, which excludes food and energy, came in around 2.5% year over year today. Housing costs and services remain the biggest contributors to inflation, even as energy prices have declined overall, except for, of course, the last couple of weeks. This report, just for a note, was done before the Iran war was completed, before the Iran war. Economists say the numbers suggest progress towards the Federal Reserve's 2% inflation target, though price pressures have not fully disappeared, and this war will definitely contribute to future meetings at the Federal Reserve on the inflation issue, especially with Jerome Powell's term coming to an end. Now, housing affordability, of course, has been a major issue across the United States, and that proposal we talked about last week, Chris, is getting close to being passed. However, there is one hiccup in that policy, and that is the one that would ban large institutional investors from buying single-family homes. And President Trump and others are arguing that corporate ownership has pushed prices far too high for first-time home buyers. Now, that proposal in this major bill, it's a bipartisan legislation, it'd be the biggest housing bill passed in over 30 years. It has run into resistance from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle because they worry that this type of action could interfere with the housing market and supply and demand. Also, the National Association of Home Builders came out against that part of the policy as well. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise has been working to bring Republican lawmakers together to discuss the issue in Congress and determine whether the investor ban should be included in the broader legislation once conferencing is done, though disagreements within Congress have slowed the progress in the conference section. This is when they bring the Senate passed bill and the House passed bill together to see if they can reconcile them. Just a little bit of what's that show we used to watch? It'll come to me. But meanwhile, one of the world's largest asset managers, speaking of private equity, is investing heavily in workforce training. BlackRock announced today a $100 million initiative aimed at expanding training for skilled trades, including electricians, plumbers, and HVAC technicians. The company says the program is designed to help address the growing shortage of skilled workers and opening pathways to stable, high-paying careers that often reach six-figure salaries without requiring a traditional four-year degree. Entertainment news, Billie Eilish is stepping into the film world potentially. The singer is attached to produce a new adaptation of Sylvia Plath's novel, The Bell Jar, with filmmaker Sarah Polley set to direct the project. The film is still in early development, but has already generated attention as a new take on one of the most influential novels exploring mental health and identity. Award season is also looking ahead, not just for now, but for next year. Comedian Nikki Glaser will return to host the 2027 Golden Globe Awards after receiving strong reviews for performance this year as well as last year. This will be her third time in a row. She's getting into Tina and Amy territory, as well as Ricky Gervais and others. This will be her third time hosting. Congratulations to her. And finally, speaking of this year's awards, the Academy Awards, being hosted by Conan O'Brien, of course, coming up this weekend, will include a tribute to filmmaker Rob Reiner. O'Brien says the segment will be very powerful, unquote, honoring Reiner's legacy through films such as Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men, which clips may appear from those movies throughout the piece, and it will highlight his contributions to modern American filmmaking. So very much a lot of things in the Hollywood world coming up, Chris.
Yeah, no question about that. Obviously, the Oscars this weekend. Coming up tomorrow, Fox's Ashley Dvorkin is going to join us live to talk about who she thinks might take home some of the hardware this coming weekend. We'll break down some of the big nominees and who we think will end up the big winners. But that Rob Reiner tribute, it's going to hit hard for multiple reasons, not least in part because, you know, one of the last things Rob Reiner did was go to Conan O'Brien's holiday party. So there's a real personal connection there as well. I'll be curious to see whether Conan's involved in that tribute in any way, shape, or form, or whether it will kind of live separately the way they do that sometimes, where someone else comes on to introduce the in memoriam.
Right. Now, he did mention to reporters that it will be very, very heartfelt. So, I mean, him mentioning it, maybe it does show he'll be somewhat a part of it. Also, he did mention in that same interview that I referenced that he doesn't really want to talk about his own feelings about how the party was the last time that the Reiners were out publicly, because he wants to have the focus be on the Reiners and their legacy, as well as, of course, what happened in the case at hand. So I think not Robert, I think Conan O'Brien is definitely trying to balance it out here, pay tribute to his friend, while at the same time not trying to put the attention on him and his role, not role, but his in the timeline, if you will, the party being in that timeline. So, but you know, seeing Conan doing this before, I think he's going to do a wonderful job and really, you know, balance this out. I mean, we saw with Robin Williams 10 years ago, where Billy Crystal was involved as a very dear friend of Robin Williams. You could see something similar with Conan O'Brien in different cases, of course. But I think you could see the friend element being a part of his Meg Ryan there potentially, and others.
Billy Crystal, yeah, for sure.
All right. Too, for Robert.
Tony P, we're going to change gears coming up after the next break, and we're going to talk about one of the best bands in the entire world. You know who we're talking about?
Who are you talking about?
We're talking about Van Halen, baby. The Red Rocker, Sammy Hagar himself. The reason why he is back in Las Vegas tonight, along with that man you saw right there from Van Halen, Michael Anthony. They're kicking off their new residency tonight. First, though, we got a chance to chat with them. We're going to share that conversation coming up on the other side of the break. You're watching the Live Zone Primetime. Why can't this be love, Tony P?
Hey, there's a lot of love in this room.
Tell me
Tony P, that's what dreams are made of. Come on, you know that gets you up out of your seat and rocking and
I got my
rolling.
air guitar going, baby. I have it rolling.
That's what I love to hear. So that is the song Dreams by Van Halen. It is off the band's album 5150, which hit #1 on the Billboard charts. It was also the first of 4 albums featuring Van Halen's new lead singer, aka Sammy Hagar, taking over for the David Lee Roth, who had some creative differences, let's just say, with Eddie Van Halen. This month, though, Tony P, marks 40 years since that album's release, and to mark the anniversary, Sammy got the band back together. Tonight, he and bassist Michael Anthony kicked off the first night of the Best of All Worlds residency in Las Vegas. First, though, I got a chance to sit down with Michael and the Red Rocker himself to talk all about the show, the album, and more. Take a look. Best of All Worlds, live in Las Vegas. Sammy, what are fans in store for?
They're in store for, they know what they're in store for. It's, we throw a huge party, and when we're in Vegas, where we get to play the same building every night, we have this magnetic set list. It's called the Master Set List, and we've got about 40 songs on there, about 12 Sammy songs, some 3 Montrose songs, some Chickenfoot songs, and about 20 Van Halen songs. And so we mix it up, every night there, especially this year, because we did it last year. We played 9 shows, and we got about 10 extra songs, and this year we're going to get a lot more than that. We got the formula down.
Well, I was just on your Instagram. I was just on your Instagram page, and I saw you putting together the set list and trying to figure out how to kind of make it a unique show every single night. Does that encourage fans to have to come on more than one night because they never know what they're going to get?
That's exactly the fans are going to do that anyway. Yeah, but they're going to do that anyway. So it's all Mike and I are trying to do is accommodate them so that they don't say, oh, man, we saw the same show last night. We can't have that. So, you can't have complaints. We want to keep our people happy. So honestly, that's why we do it. And, Mike and I have been talking. We came up with it in between these interviews. We came up with this new idea that when we're putting the set list together, right before we walk out on stage, we're going to do the last final things, and we're going to film it backstage in the dressing room and show it on the big screen to the fans out in the audience. And so that right before we walk out, they're going to be going, oh my God, they're going to open with right now. Oh, they're going to do this. Oh, they're going to do that. And get them all fired up. It's a great little intro to the show. We just invented it. Just right on this interview 10 minutes ago. That's the way Mike and I roll. We're spontaneous, man. It's all about the fans.
I love that. And, so that kind of answered a question that I had originally, which was like, do you divide it up into your different eras? It seems like, no, you guys are going to be jumping back and forth throughout the catalog and all the different phases.
Everything's mixed in. And also, if you're a Joe Satriani fan, we're doing some Joe Satriani songs too. So we're throwing it all in there. And yeah, it's great. It's not like we played some old stuff and some new stuff. There he is.
Yeah, so Joe has actually been here at Fox 5 before. This is our main anchor, Steve Sheneby, who unfortunately couldn't be here to talk to you guys today, but he is a huge Joe Satriani fan and had him sign a guitar and everything. So he's going to be signed. We might have to make a guys trip out to Sin City to check you guys out.
Hey, come on now.
That's what this calls for.
Yeah, don't threaten us, man.
Road trip, come on, road trip.
Listen, you mentioned about how this is all for the fans. I've got to ask you about the fans, Sammy, because the people who grew up with your music, they might have kids and grandkids of their own these days. What's it like kind of playing for these multi-generational crowds?
It's the coolest thing ever. My favorite thing, I've said it every time anybody asks me this question, is when I see like a father or a mother and father, and with a teenage son or a teenage daughter or the whole teenage family. There was a guy, he had his 4 kids in Phoenix on the last year's tour, and he had his 4 kids with him, this guy, his father and his 4 sons, and they had the front and center, and his father's so proud to show his boys, his heroes up there, Mike and I, and that, I have goosebumps on my arms right now, just telling you this, because it's so awesome because my generation, we didn't hang around with our parents, man. And my dad's music, he would have taken me to sing Hank Williams and stuff like that. And today I would say, yes, man, I go see Hank Williams. But back then, there's no way I'm going to go see Elvis Presley, or the Beatles,
It's also great that the music resonates with the younger kids now too.
Yeah.
Which sometimes blows my mind, but it's great that they love it. No generation gap.
Yeah, it's really a tribute to the music of our era. Mike and I, the era of the 80s, Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, stuff like that, Pink Floyd. These bands, it's crossing generations. You know why? Because it was great music and it was live music. These guys actually played their instruments and they played it, and they went out and jammed, and it was just organic event instead of just something that was just punched in and all digitized and all that. And that's what we are. We're still carrying that torch, and it seems to be working, because this is the first time I've seen generations and generations in my lifetime of a music. Yeah, it's working. Yeah. It's great.
And Michael, we're recording this on Throwback Thursday, so I do want to take you back 40 years to when 5150 came out. At the time, did you know that you were creating music magic? Did you know 4 decades later you would still be performing these songs and fans would it would resonate the way that it has?
Now, of course, you don't know if, it's going to be resonating 40 years from, from back then, but we knew that the day that Sammy walked into the studio, Eddie, Alex, and I were sitting there. We had a little bit of music written that would end up eventually on the 5150 album, but we knew right from the start, when we first started playing and Sammy joined in, started singing, that the chemistry was there. And I mean, you can be great musicians, not have chemistry, or have the chemistry and the music suffers. But Van Halen, it was like, it just clicked, and we had the whole ball of wax, and we knew we had something special. Obviously, you never know how the fans are going to accept it, but we knew that we had something great going. And man, you live for the moment there. It's like 40 years from then, we're still living. It's like, oh my gosh, there's been a zillion moments, and they're all special.
Good news, Tony P. If you can't make it out to Vegas to see them on one of those residency dates, you don't have to, because the guys are also hitting the road this summer. You see the list right there. You can catch them at National Harbor in Oxon Hill, Maryland, June 26th and June 27th. Tony P., that was definitely one of the rock and roll highlights of my entire life, because Van Halen is one of those bands that has just existed like forever for me. And, I was joking the day that I did this interview that Van Halen's music is super associated with David Copperfield, the magician, for me, because in all of his specials that he used to do every year, there would inevitably always be a Van Halen song, including Dreams, which is the one that I played right out of the commercial break. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And to West Virginia Ben in the comment section of YouTube, did I hear Satriani? Yes, you did hear Joe Satriani. He is doing that residency with them, playing shredding electric guitar. And he has actually been live in studio with us before, as you saw, with Steve Shenevy signing his guitar. Yeah. So, whether you love him for I Can't Drive 55, whether you love him for his days with Van Halen, or maybe you just love some Cabo Wabo, the Red Rocker is still going strong. And Tony P., here is my fun fact. Here is my fun fact about Sammy Hagar.
What do you got? What do you got for me?
The man is 78 years old.
He doesn't look it.
He doesn't look it, and he rocks out like he is still 38 years old, 28 years old.
The rock and roll folks, whether it's Keith Richards, who, again, has had quite the journey in life and still has made it to his 80s, okay? You look at Sammy Hagar, almost 80, looking great. I think there's something about the rock and roll people, the rockers, there's something about that. I don't know, but I got to tell you, Van Halen is one of those just names. It's Van Halen. It's kind of like Heinz ketchup. You just kind of it's in the ether, right? Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, those names just are so synonymous with rock and roll. And
no question.
It's like Jimi Hendrix. When you hear Jimmy, you hear Jimi Hendrix, right? Or Hendrix, right? It's they're in that pantheon. It really, Little Richard, all those names. are in the pantheon, and it's really, really cool to see them continuing to perform and doing wonderful work out there.
Yeah, and just in case you didn't know, Eddie Van Halen also contributed the electric guitar solo to the song "Beat It."
He did. That's right. That really is correct. This Panama as well. Great song, by the way.
Excellent. That's a David Lee Roth, but it is excellent. All right, we're going to take one more quick break. We're going to take one more quick break. We're going to leave you with a little more Van Halen music as we go to break.
Of course you are.
When we come back, though, Tony P, we're going to talk about Team USA. They're on the bubble. Are they going to make it? Are they going to advance in the World Baseball Classic? We'll talk about it on the other side of the break. All right, welcome back to the Live Zone Primetime on this Wednesday night. Down to our final 5 minutes. Tony P, I can only imagine that your allegiances are torn. Team USA, Team Italy, going head-to-head last night in the World Baseball Classic. And Tony P, not sure whether you watched, but Italy shocked the United States. Beat them. Final score, 8-6, Tony P. 8-6. I went to the wrong video. Darn it. There it was. It was a shocker. Wow. It was not only a shocker because they lost. It was a shocker because they got handily beat. 8-6 makes it sound like a much better game than it actually was. They were actually shut out for most of it before finally getting their act together, for a lack of a better phrase. Now, the big thing was that if Italy lost today to Mexico, Team USA was eliminated from the quarterfinals. If Italy won, then there are all these. Remember, we were talking to David Betancourt last week about you got to win big because that plays into it. As of right now, Italy in the bottom of the eighth is beating Mexico 9-1. That is great. That is great news for Team USA. At this point, it looks like they will advance to the quarterfinals as a result.
Italy, I mean, who would have thought? I mean, again, I never associated Italy with baseball. And I mean, and I was over there a couple months ago, and sports, of course, a major part of diplomacy and all those type of things, but never really heard a ton about baseball, or I was just not paying attention during some of those meetings when I was over there. because it is truly amazing that Italy is doing this well against two incredible teams in the U.S. and Mexico. They are both, have really great offenses, both of them. And the fact that they're scoring this many runs and then holding Mexico to 1 run in 8 innings, that is incredible.
Tony P, I will just burst your bubble a little bit that most of the team is actually made up of Italian Americans. For example,
my bad. Yes.
Philadelphia Phillies starting pitcher Aaron Nola was on the mound for Team Italy tonight. So this is more of the heritage of which you identify playing for Team Italy. Not exactly a roster made up of Italian baseball players. A scrappy team of Italian baseball players you've never heard before.
I thought. Is there a couple at least?
Tony P, what I love though was I don't know if you saw the dugout celebration after they hit home runs. Team Italy would sip a shot of espresso.
Well, and the mafia kiss on both cheeks.
And an Armani sport coat.
Great. Italian men express love. Italian American guys too, in a very, very wholesome way. Just saying, it's a Tony Soprano kiss, and just for the mafia.
Yeah,
for all Italian Americans and Italians alike.
Also, admittedly, in the earlier rounds of this tournament, the shot of espresso that they were doing had a little more than just coffee in it.
Shocked.
It was spiked a little bit. So,
of course it was.
Of course it was.
It's part of it. It's kind of in golf. And I don't play. I'm sorry, I don't play baseball anymore. But I remember, seeing friends who played softball leagues, also played the golf leagues. Alcohol is called swing oil for a reason. Swing oil. It kind of gets you a little loose to get you ready to go. Especially if it's cold out or it's a little bit too hot, kind of calms you down a little bit. So I definitely understand that one. I totally forgot there was a lot of Italian Americans on that team. That is interesting. Maybe we could have used some of those guys last night.
No question about it. In the meantime, while Tony P, what do you got? What's on your calendar? You're enjoying some time off tomorrow and Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
I am. A couple of days. Yes, thank you for letting me take those days, Chris. I'll be doing some stuff with some friends here. Then I'll be in Palm Beach a little bit as well here in the Boca area. There's a really good documentary I want to point out. I forgot to add this into my rundown, but it's from Netflix and it's from Louis Theroux. I think Louis Theroux. Yep. And it's called Inside the Manosphere. So this is all about, of course, the red pill movement, the incel culture, looks maxing, all the toxic masculinity. That's kind of the umbrella term. But Louis Theroux, I think he's a comedian and journalist, goes throughout that and interviews, I think, Andrew Tate, some other more of these toxic masculinity influences, and really gets down to what's going on these online communities that have been talked about in the show Adolescence as well. That was done by Netflix last year. So I'm really excited to watch this. I think it's gonna be a wonderful documentary. I think any parent that's dealing with this or that has young men or raising young men should absolutely watch this documentary, as well as anybody that's in my age group and beyond, and even in all of our age groups, to just really understand what's going on. And if you're looking for
something a little a different vibe entirely, I don't know if you've seen the Dinosaurs documentary on Netflix, narrated by Morgan Freeman. It debuted with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and people absolutely love it. Social media is going a little nuts for it.
Of course it is. Maybe we get the Oscars coming up. I think Timothée Chalamet may have blown his Oscar opportunity by that PR tour he just finished.
I 100% agree. Like I said, we'll talk to Ashley Dvorkin all about that coming up tomorrow night. We're also going to hear from Avett Brothers bassist Bob Crawford, who's coming to town for his new book, which just dropped yesterday, America's Founding Son, John Quincy Adams. Listen, it's the last thing I expected from a rock and roll star. In the meantime, Tony P, have a great night. Thank you so much for joining us here. Fox 5 News at 10 coming up next. All right, Tony P, stream's over. Thanks so much, man. Enjoy your time off.